to spend some time talking about Yemen today, and as you can see, I try to do as much research as possible just because I'm not too familiar with all the details and I don't want to give any inaccurate information. As I go through the explanation and analysis of what's been going on, I just want you all to keep in mind that whatever is happening in Yemen right now is rooted in its very long and turbulent history, grappling against foreign invaders and different imperial powers like the British and the Ottomans. In the 1800s, the British conquered Aden, which is part of southern Yemen. And the reason they did that is because it was a very strategic port city due to it being on the Red Sea. And that meant that Britain could get to India way easier than it used to. So it would give easy access for its other imperial holdings in East Asia. It's also important to know that within that space, the Ottomans were also present, and the Ottomans actually were controlling the northern part of Yemen while the British held the southern part where Aden is. And so what happened is that in 1904, the British and Ottomans decided to draw a border because there was too much tension and there were a lot of skirmishes between the two colonial powers. And what ended up happening is that they demarcated the border between the north and the south of Yemen. So come 1962, a civil war actually breaks out between the northern part of Yemen and the southern part of Yemen. And that war pitted people in the north who were more tribal and familial in the way that they governed their society against a more urban elite that wanted to form a republic, so a different way of governing their society. So following that war in 1962, the British were kicked out, and that civil war lasted 8 years. The reason that war is significant is because, as you could see, that's where the tension between North and Southern Yemen is starting, and a lot of it is in part due to different colonial powers having had a certain level of influence and control on the region for centuries before. Fast forward to 2011, when the Arab Spring was happening and a lot of places in the Middle East were having revolutions and rebellions against their governments. The people of Yemen overthrew the government and a transitional government was placed in 2011. So in 2014, which is the third time period that we're discussing, because remember, we talked about 1800s to 1960s and that 1960s civil war, and then 2011 with the Arab Spring, and then the third timeline is 2014, which is when Houthis take control of Sana'a, which is the capital of Yemen, and they take control of the government. So the Houthis take control of the capital and they gain access to the presidential palace, and they force the president to resign. The president goes to Saudi Arabia and seeks refuge in Saudi Arabia, and that host government, as we'll see, throughout the remainder of this war up to this day, is still involved in what's happening in Yemen and is causing a lot of the humanitarian disaster, which we'll get to in a second. When the Houthis took control of the capital and they seized the government, the United Nations came in and they wanted to broker peace talks between the official government and the Houthis, and it obviously failed. I mean, not surprising, because the UN is... I digress, because that's not the point of this. But anyways, peace talks fail, and in 2016, the Houthis formed sort of like a political council to govern northern Yemen and also Sana'a, which is the capital, alongside the former president that was there before 2014. But by the end of 2017, that council wasn't working, so that former president just broke with the Houthis, and he called all of his followers to take up arms against them because he didn't want to govern alongside them. But he was killed and he was defeated in 2 days. Since then, a lot of regional powers and international powers have been getting involved. Most infamous of them is Saudi Arabia, the US, and the United Arab Emirates. And the US response has largely been through airstrikes and sale of weapons and other arms, and Yemen's internationally recognized government is just sitting in Saudi Arabia very comfortably while its people are dying. Literally, innocent civilians are being killed every single day, and there's a huge famine in Yemen. 28 million Yemenis are under bombings since that war started. Since 2014, Yemen has been unstable, and in the last several weeks the story of Yemen has resurfaced on some news channels, not as much as it should be, but we've been hearing more about what's happening in Yemen with the electricity cuts, and the reason for that is that the Houthis fired missiles at the United Arab Emirates, and the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia retaliated, and it's causing even more loss of life in Yemen. So before we finish this historical overview and this analysis of what's been going on, I just wanted to take some time to talk about the humanitarian aid aspect. So actually, it's become known that Yemen's most valuable natural resource, imagine, is its humanitarian aid, because a lot of humanitarian aid agencies and different aid organizations are competing over aid, and there isn't an actual monitoring process that sees whether or not this money is going to the people that need it most. So there's been $4 billion in aid so far, and clearly it hasn't been able to do much in terms of ending the famine, ending malnutrition in children, all this stuff. And all the while, it's just a few networks of people are getting rich and benefiting, while the larger majority of Yemen is suffering. And in Saudi Arabia, the number of Yemeni workers in any given company should not be more than 25% in comparison to the 40% that Bangladeshis and Indians enjoy. I say enjoy. So that's also another layer of what's happening. Dumping money at the problem is not going to help in the case of Yemen, because clearly the billions of dollars of aid haven't done anything but aggravate the problem, and it's just become a war that's for profit at the expense of people, which is oftentimes how war plays out, unfortunately. And this is all to say that to have an actual solution to what's happening, there needs to be an actual re-evaluation of what a Yemeni state would look like, and to do that, we need to go back to what was happening in 1960s and even before that in the 1800s with the colonial powers of Britain and the Ottomans.
To be talking about what's happening in Yemen. The extremist group, the Houthis, launched an airstrike which killed 3 people. So Saudi, the UAE's allies, responded by launching an airstrike back, but that caused over 70 civilian deaths and over 200 injuries. It's clear that even though Saudi is trying to protect and retaliate, who is suffering the most loss, and innocent children and civilians that have nothing to do with the UAE, the Houthis, and Saudi are suffering because of this. Some U.S. media is solely blaming the Houthis for this attack, when in reality, again, Saudi and the UAE also have a big part in this, and more deaths were caused by the Saudi airstrike than by the Houthi airstrike. If I find places that you can donate to, I'll leave them below, but for right now, just keep mentioning Yemen, keep talking about it, and keep them in your prayers.
لا يزال الخير حيا لا يزال إن في الدنيا سلاما وظلال أخبر الأيام أنا في وصول
Here's how the U.S. caused the worst humanitarian crisis on the globe. Since the civil war broke out in 2015 in Yemen, 80% of the country needs humanitarian aid. There's been over 4.5 million displaced people, and over 17 million people are facing famine. This started back in 2015 when the Iran-backed rebel group, the Houthis, took out the pro-Saudi government. Then the Saudis formed a coalition with the US, the UK, and other Western allies to essentially fund a civil war. Between violence and famine, 377,000 people have died since the start of the war, including 70% of those being children. Over 15,000 civilians have died due to bombings led by the Saudis and the US. And in the 8 years, the US has supplied over $55 billion worth of military aid to the war.
You may have heard about the ongoing conflict in Yemen, the Arab world's poorest country. Foreign powers have taken sides among the warring parties, and thousands have been killed in the chaos the UN describes as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. The first spark of the conflict emerged during the Arab uprisings in 2011, when Yemenis protested the country's long-time ruling president, Ali Abdullah Saleh, criticized for causing widespread unemployment and government corruption. But one of the biggest protests came from a politically motivated Shia rebel group called the Houthis, which had been at war with the Saleh government for years. Saleh was toppled and forced to hand over his position to this guy, Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi, his former vice president, who's since been running the government. Then things got complicated. A UN-sponsored national dialogue was established to address the future of the country, and a new federal system was agreed on. But tensions flared again when a proposal was made to divide Yemen into 6 federal regions. The Houthis and a southern separatist movement called the Hirak objected to the proposal, saying it was undermining their own distinct interests and national vision. The Hadi government, which seemed like the best solution at the time, wasn't able to maintain order, and groups like Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and Daesh took advantage of the political instability across the country. In the meantime, the Houthis were also making territorial gains but lacked military power. Their next move came as a surprise. They turned to Saleh, their once sworn enemy, knowing that he still had military forces loyal to him. And Saleh saw this as an opportunity to regain his title, so the two sides collaborated. The Houthis took control of the capital Sana'a and began moving towards Aden, where President Hadi was located. He fled to Saudi Arabia after they seized the airport. Now, the Houthis' advancement was seen as a threat to Riyadh because it says Iran is backing the rebel group, and sharing a long border means stronger Iranian influence could seep into the country. So Saudi Arabia responded to Hadi's pleas and formed a coalition. They set up an air and sea blockade. Then it launched an aerial campaign with the aim of driving the Houthis out and restoring the country's internationally recognized government. Local observers in the Yemen Data Project say almost a third of the Saudi-led coalition airstrikes have targeted non-military zones, such as marketplaces, schools, hospitals, wedding ceremonies, and even funerals. In the meantime, the United States began carrying out its own campaign in Yemen. Not only was it supplying the Saudi-led coalition with billions of dollars worth of weapons, but also targeting Al-Qaeda and Daesh. By the end of 2017, the tables began to turn. Former President Saleh, who for months allied with the Houthis, offered to put an end to the fight with the Saudi-led coalition. But this move was seen as treacherous by the Houthis, and about 48 hours later, Saleh was found dead outside of Sana'a. The Houthis admitted to killing him. The rebels were now being targeted from all sides, and most of Saleh's supporters became anti-Houthi. Meanwhile, the Hadi government was battling a new enemy, separatist forces in the south, backed militarily and financially by the United Arab Emirates. While the UAE is still part of the Saudi-led coalition, it is said to be continuing efforts to maintain a strategic foothold in the south, crippling the once united campaign against the Houthis. But experts warn it's not just the UAE. All members of the coalition are pursuing their own agendas, and each side of the conflict is said to have violated humanitarian and international law. Getting an accurate death toll is difficult. In 2017, the UN says at least 10,000 Yemenis had died, and to date, that number hasn't been updated. More than 3 million people have been displaced, and millions of Yemenis trapped in the conflict are at dire risk of starvation and disease. So where are we now? President Hadi is based in Saudi Arabia, but his government still operates out of Aden. And the conflict between the separatists, Houthis, and forces loyal to him are still ongoing. So with everyone running their own agendas, will we ever see an end to this war?
بيان صادر عن القوات المسلحة اليمنية بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال تعالى: أذن للذين يقاتلون بأنهم ظلموا وإن الله على نصرهم لقدير. صدق الله العظيم. بعد نجاح القوات المسلحة اليمنية بعون الله تعالى في فرض قرارها منع السفن الإسرائيلية من الملاحة في البحرين الأحمر والعربي، ونتيجة لاستمرار العدو الصهيوني في ارتكاب المجازر المروعة وحرب الإبادة الجماعية والحصار بحق إخواننا في غزة، فإن القوات المسلحة اليمنية تعلن عن منع مرور السفن المتجهة إلى الكيان الصهيوني من أي جنسية كانت إذا لم يدخل لقطاع غزة حاجته من الغذاء والدواء، وستصبح هدفا مشروعا لقواتنا المسلحة. وحرصا منا على سلامة الملاحة البحرية نحذر جميع السفن والشركات من التعامل مع الموانئ الإسرائيلية. تؤكد القوات المسلحة اليمنية حرصها الكامل على استمرار حركة التجارة العالمية عبر البحرين الأحمر والعربي لكافة السفن ولكافة الدول عدا السفن المرتبطة بالإسرائيلي أو التي سوف تقوم بنقل بضائع إلى الموانئ الإسرائيلية. سوف تقوم القوات المسلحة اليمنية بتطبيق هذا القرار من لحظة إعلان هذا البيان. صنعاء 26 من جمادي الأولى 1445 للهجرة، الموافق 9 من ديسمبر 2023، صادر عن القوات المسلحة اليمنية.
Israel failed to consider when they expelled 750,000 Palestinians 73 years ago was that their grandchildren now from all over the world are coming back. We're here. Free, free Palestine!
كان لا بد للشعوب العربية والإسلامية أن تقول كلمتها وأن تنتصر لغزة ولأطفالها ونسائها. ونحن ومن واقع الشعور بالمسؤولية الدينية والأخلاقية والإنسانية والوطنية، واستجابة لمطالب شعبنا اليمني العزيز ومطالب الشعوب الحرة، ونجدة لأهلنا المظلومين في غزة، كان لا بد للقوات المسلحة اليمنية أن تقوم بواجبها بالتوكل على الله وانتصارا للمظلومية التاريخية للشعب الفلسطيني العزيز. وعليه وبعون الله تعالى قامت قواتنا المسلحة بإطلاق دفعة كبيرة من الصواريخ البالستية والمجنحة وعدد كبير من الطائرات المسيرة على أهداف مختلفة للعدو الإسرائيلي.
America is now trying to wage war on the Houthis. Why? Because the Houthis are achieving their objectives. They're stopping ships from going through the Red Sea, so now they're having to go around Africa, which is what? It's costing them more money. And America is saying the Houthis aren't abiding by international law. Now they're trying to get a multinational maritime task force together to stop them. And you know who they're trying to include? Arab nations. The same Arab nations that only sit in meetings with Israel and America and politely ask them to stop what they're doing to Palestinians. I hope that this doesn't work.
The Yemenis are God's strongest soldiers, because tell me how these people are already going through their own worst humanitarian crisis. Their people don't have food. Their children are dying. All kinds of things are happening. They're starving. And on top of that, they still continue to support Palestine. And because of their support of Palestine, they're the only ones that are doing something action-wise to help the people of Palestine. And the US and the UN now sanctioned them, barred them to have food and aid from the UN, which means more starvation for them, which means more problems for them. And they're still standing for Palestine. These people are at the brink. Girl, still standing for Palestine. You have the Saudi Arabia, Jordan, all these other Arab countries doing absolutely nothing. Just talk on their podium, no action. They're not fighting Israel. They're not doing. In fact, they even opened their airway for Israel to fly through to attack the people of Gaza. And Yemen, who is already going through the worst, is helping Palestine and stand on business to help Palestine. A Houthi military spokesperson said all ships sailing to Israeli ports are banned from the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea. If Gaza does not receive the food and medication and medicine it needs, all ships in the Red Sea bound for Israeli ports, regardless of their nationality, will become a target for our armed forces. These are the people of God. These are the people of God. These are the strongest soldiers of God. This is what all the Arab nations should be doing for Palestine, for their own people, for any group of people. And they refuse. The Houthis, they're the best of us. They're the best of us. And may Allah reward them and elevate them and increase them and help them from their own suffering as well. This is just, I am in an awe of these people.
Hey Yemen, what's new with you? We are supporting Palestinians and declared a war against their oppressors. And what made you do that? Because we're not okay with the killing of thousands and thousands of innocent people. Wait, it's in the thousands? Yeah, let me just take over for a second. Yeah, it's in the thousands. And just today they bombed a refugee camp. How many were killed because of that? 400 people. Yeah, that's why we joined. That's messed up. All that killing is not okay.
You know how Yemen right now is Palestine's ultimate homie by attacking the Israeli ships that are trying to get through the Red Sea and basically forcing them to reroute to go around in the entirety of Africa? Well, the UN World Food Program just stopped sending aid to Yemen because they were doing this. Fantastic.
I saw a comment on another post talking about how airstrikes are happening not only in Somalia but in Yemen as well. Someone had commented that there were like 27 airstrikes recently. I can't find anything in the month of February, but yes, for sure, last month, the Saudi-led coalition, along with US-made weapons, did drop an airstrike in Yemen, actually on a prison. So over 90 prisoners had died, and I believe there were so many more were injured in the hundreds. As we know, in the past 7 years, Yemen has been hit by airstrikes from plenty of other countries, Russia, the UK, the US, Saudi, and this has led to a humanitarian crisis because it's caused many people to need humanitarian aid. People are starving, people are sick, and to target a prison is really sick because regardless of these people committing a crime or not, they did not deserve to be bombed and die like this. So the United Nations has said that they want an investigation into why these airstrikes happened and why the prison was targeted. Now, I don't know if that's really going to make much of a difference because we know the UN isn't really always helpful, but this is just a reminder that we still have brothers and sisters suffering all over the world and that need our prayers and that need us to be talking about this and bringing awareness.
Did y'all know that Yemen is like the only country that's militaristically supporting Palestine right now, and that the UN just excluded them from their World Food Program because they don't have enough money? Did y'all notice how Spotify Wrapped dropped a couple of days earlier than usual, specifically on the day that people were using as like an international post for Palestine Day to bring attention to the genocide and like the humanitarian crisis happening? Did you guys notice how the ceasefire happened over Black Friday weekend and there wasn't even an actual ceasefire because Palestine was still being bombed, as well as like Syria and Lebanon and other countries? Did you know that Israel is like detaining and will not allow Irish citizens to leave as kind of like a fuck you to the Irish government for supporting Palestine? Did you know Netanyahu went to fucking high school in Philadelphia? Well, we definitely know where he learned it from.
So the United States is punishing Yemen for supporting Palestine through the World Food Program that the UN has set up over there. The UN has been providing aid to Yemen every single year, and this year the amount of money that went into their aid has been $1.16 billion in helping the people of Yemen with food and all types of aid, and the US just cut it off. They just cut off the aid because Yemen is supporting Palestine. This is what the United States and these colonizers stand for. This is what they do. They come into your country, they mess it up, they start wars between you guys, civil wars and all kinds of stuff, and then you guys, the country is starving and need of help, and then they play this image like, oh, we are your savior, we're gonna come and help you, even though they started your conflict, they started your war, and then you know, you are forever in debt to them because they're helping you with all this food and money and your people need them, blah, blah, blah. And then whenever you don't do what they want, this is what they do. Yemen, they're stopping the aid. Millions of people in Yemen needs food. And the U.S. just barred the aid to come to Yemen. This is what they do. This is what the colonizers do. It's like we're living in a dystopia. They're stealing so much from Yemen. They're making sure that Yemen is always fighting each other. There's a civil war in Yemen. That they caused that. They're responsible for that. And the people are in need of help. And then they come as this savior complex, like, oh, we're going to help you. We're going to save you. And this is what they do if you don't do what they say. They take away the aid. Isn't it fabulous? Isn't colonial power just impressive? This is what they do in Africa everywhere. In Africa everywhere. They punish you. And they're the reason why Yemen is starving. They're the reason why Yemen is starving in the first place. Crazy, isn't it? America. And they portray themselves as America the Great. Yeah. How pathetic.
Isn't it just bizarre how short people's memories are about collective punishment? Like, have we forgot what that word means? Here we got the UN just cutting food supplies to the people of Yemen. Like, that's not fair. What did the people of Yemen ever do for this? Like, oh, because the Yemenis are forcing Israel to take the long way all around Africa to reach their destination? Who would have thought Yemen's the El Chapo of the Middle East?
Hi, good evening. Just like to notify you about something that just came up in the news right at the moment here in the Middle East. Yesterday there was a coalition emergency meeting in Saudi Arabia, and a coalition has been gathered together to attack Yemen and the Yemenis and the Houthis. In the next few days it will be announced, because of their obstruction of the passing ships through the Red Sea to Israel. And I believe that that coalition will be announced in the next few days. It includes, surprisingly, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, United States of America, France, and the United Kingdom. So all these countries have gathered together with Israel. Israel that is bombing and killing all the thousands of Palestinians. The whole world has gathered together in a coalition with Israel to attack the Yemenis. And they are planning to attack Lebanon. They have threatened to attack Lebanon. So basically, anyone obstructing the Israelis from murdering Palestinians, this coalition will launch an attack on. So this shows you that Israel, without the support of these countries, could not have and would not have created a genocide in Gaza. It was with the permission and the blessing of all these countries. The whole world is watching. And now they're going after the countries that are actually obstructing Israel or trying to push Israel to a ceasefire. This tells you there is no ceasefire, I guess. Israel cannot last any longer. Israel is losing its war every day. Yesterday it killed 3 of its own hostages. So Israel killed 3 Israeli soldiers yesterday, hostages, with American weapons, with American taxpayers. How does the Jewish community feel about that? How does the Israeli community feel about that? Anyway, I will be bringing you a written report published in Palestine.com. Please follow me on the website I will put at the bottom for you, and the Telegram channel, so you can receive all the articles, all the videos, and all the news by the hour every day. Thank you very much. God bless you, and thank you for your support, and thank you for listening and posting and passing this information. Love you all.
Is there going to be an end in the 8-year war in Yemen? For the last 8 years, Yemen has been in a devastating civil war. In those years, 2 countries have used it as a proxy conflict, Saudi Arabia and Iran. Because of this proxy war, hundreds of thousands of Yemeni lives were lost, millions displaced with a continuing famine. Too often in history, innocent people are caught in the crossfire between two powers.
Here in Yemen, millions of children are slowly starving to death. Their parents can do little other than watch.
If it had not been for this aid organisation, I would have left my daughter to die at home. I could not treat her, and I did not have the money to transfer her to a hospital.
14 million Yemenis could be on the brink of starvation, with more than 2 million children already suffering some form of acute malnutrition. And it's described the humanitarian crisis as the worst in...
My people, today I am not happy. You know, I was even crying in my car. I saw what Saudi Arabia is doing in Yemen. I am a Muslim, but we the Muslim, we are not united. We the Muslim, we are not connected. That's why today Saudi Arabia is killing people. All the Muslim leaders, they shut their mouth. My people, Saudi Arabia and UAE are hijacking my religion, which is Islam. Saudi Arabia are hijacking Islam. Today Saudi Arabia are killing innocent people in Yemen. Today in Yemen, Saudi Arabia are blowing up mosque. Saudi Arabia are blowing up hospital. Saudi Arabia are blowing up school. Today Saudi Arabia are executing my fellow Muslims in Yemen. But guess what? The United Nations, they don't care. You know why they don't care? It's because of Saudi Arabia are killing Muslims. That's why the United Nations, they don't care. Why?
سبيل الدموع سبيل مريح.
Okay, I don't know how many of y'all saw this challenge where a man is offering $10,000 to the most liked video using this sound. This girl said she will donate 100% of the money to Yemen. Mind you, it's hell going over in Yemen. It's a literal war zone. And you know, a girl like me is always willing to help. So I commented, for the algorithm. Some of the replies under it was very interesting. Someone said, don't give her money. It's going to go straight to warlords. I hate to break it to you, bud, but you've been giving money to warlords for a very long time. Ask the taxes about it. The second one said, help those in America first, which is funny to me because when Black people, gay people, women, and other minorities were talking about the awful things in America, y'all was saying, well, somewhere else, someone has it worse. But now that it's a Middle Eastern country, it's help America first. There's going to be a part 2 to this video.
Why are they bombing Yemen right now? They're bombing Yemen because Yemen wants to be free. Yemen used to have a dictator, a president who was a dictator, a puppet of the Saudis. But the people in Yemen decided they wanted democracy. They wanted independence of their country. And they overthrew the U.S. and Saudi-backed dictator. And that's when the Saudi bombing campaign started, with U.S. support. They're bombing Yemen in order to stop them from developing democracy and independence. And why else? It's a well-kept secret that Yemen has vast untapped oil resources, one of the biggest oil deposits in the region. And they know that an independent Yemen could utilize these oil resources to start developing their economy and exporting. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia and Israel are teaming up against Yemen because they want to keep it poor. They don't want it to become an independent country like Iran or Venezuela with public control of natural resources.
زنوة كحبانة كي حلوة علي الطلاق اقسم بالله انكم والله
Do you remember back home? Would you like to remember? Let me help you remember.
The end of the war. Our fellow soldiers, the clones, the ones we Jedi fought side by side with, suddenly turned and betrayed us.
I think I'm falling for you.
سادوها الطغاة بعد انحضار ثورتنا هالذلة بكل اشكالها اصبح بين الذكر بين اوساطها تنزف دماء اعظم خسارة تهد.
Okay, show me your favorite outfit. Now the outfit you wear around your house. Now tell me what you know about what's going on in Yemen. Yeah, Yemen, the topic we all talked about for a week and then forgot about. It's still happening. It didn't go away after your post. In 2017, the United Nations declared Yemen to be the world's largest humanitarian crisis. 80% of the population, that's 24 million people, are in need of humanitarian or protection assistance. Over 14 million of those people are in acute need. Yemen is facing war, poverty, famine, all while fighting a worldwide pandemic. Children are starving to death. Don't forget about them. TikTok takes links out of my bios, but please Google Yemen crisis donations. Again, please don't forget them.
But it hurts so good, can you say it? Can you say it? Your love is like turning off the firefighter. Your love is like turning off the street. We, now we're us. That boy sus. Get the pump, that's a must. I don't trust. Okay.
Did you know that there's an ongoing crisis in Yemen that's impacting millions of people? After more than 8 years of conflict and humanitarian crisis, here are 3 things you should know about what's happening. 1. Yemen remains one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. 30 million people live in Yemen, and more than 2/3 of the population live below the poverty line and are dependent on humanitarian assistance. 2. Yemeni communities are massively overstretched, yet they still shelter some 100,000 refugees and asylum seekers from other war-torn countries such as Iraq, Somalia and Ethiopia. 3. UNHCR is providing life-saving support through the provision of cash assistance, shelter kits and a wide range of protection services to displaced Yemenis as well as to refugees and asylum seekers across the country. UNHCR is committed to staying and delivering in Yemen to assist the millions of people who desperately need help. With increased support, UNHCR will be able to reach more vulnerable families with assistance and services. Visit our website to find out how you can help.
Hi, my name is Sama, and I'd really appreciate it if you just gave me 60 seconds of your time because I want to dedicate this video to something that I am super grateful for. So if you know me, you know that I've created a campaign fundraiser to try and raise money for starving families in Yemen. And I created that around the beginning of 2020. Around December of last year, I made a video to spread awareness, hopefully, and get more donations in. And for my small account, the video blew up. There's a lot of supportive comments and likes, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who did support me on that. I also shared it on my Instagram page, and as you can see, the goal is $50,000, which is a huge sum of money. But so far, we have raised $105. Me, this is a great achievement and it's incredible, and I'm so thankful to everybody who donated, so thank you so much. In one way, 105 Yemeni individuals now have meals, and in another perspective, a whole family is covered for a whole month and 30 other individuals have meals to eat. I'm super grateful, thank you all so much.
I want to talk about Yemen because it looks like no one else will. Here's the situation. According to the United Nations, a child dies every 10 minutes in Yemen. If Yemen was 100 people, 80 need aid to survive, 60 barely have anything to eat, 58 have no access to clean water. Very recently, 100 civilians died in Yemen. These airstrikes killed 100 civilians and hundreds more are injured. If you're the type of person that doesn't care when I tell you this sort of information, if you're desensitized to the fact that Muslims are being killed, brown people are being killed, then consider this. The money that is being spent to fund these airstrikes, that money could be used for universal health care, for free student loans, to end this pandemic, to give people more relief. Instead, we use that money for what? Destruction. Call your senator right now. Tell them you want them to stop supporting this endless, needless war. If not for me and my family, do it for yourself.
Do not forget Yemen. They are still in the middle of a famine. Right now, 20 million Yemenis are in need of humanitarian aid, and 16 million of those Yemenis are in need of food and other resources to sustain their lives. Not to mention, there are 400,000 children under the age of 5 that are suffering from severe acute malnutrition. And on top of that, global funding for Yemen has reduced by 40% in 2021. When you donate $50 to Good Deed Charity, that can provide 1,400 pieces of bread to 125 starving children. In Islam, if we donate or provide to those in need, it doesn't decrease your wealth. And saving one person or helping one person, it's as if you helped all of humanity. Please spread the word and donate whatever you can.